وأعتذر على التأخير لأنه الطريق كان مقطوع اليوم مع الأسف بسبب حادث. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أنبياء الله جميعا وعلى سيدهم وخاتمهم حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وربك يخلق ما يشاء ويختار ما كان لهم الخيرة من أمرهم سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. There is a direct reference to the successors of the prophets and their successors in the Holy Quran. Sometimes the Holy Quran would mention the name, Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. وإذ ابتلى إبراهيم ربه بكلمات فأتمهن قال إني جاعلك للناس إماما. So God mentions the name, chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah. إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا. Who are those who believe? الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. This is a direct reference without mentioning the name, mentioning the circumstances, mentioning the characteristics of that person. A reference to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Or again in the same chapter, chapter 5, Ya ayyuha al-Rasool balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. Deliver this special message, appointing Ali ibn Abi Talib as your successor. Or many years before it in Mecca, Surah Al-Shu'ara, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Another reference to the succession, khilafah, succession to the Prophet, that you have to appoint, you have to declare, you have to make it public. Now many people ask, why does God assume this responsibility of appointing someone after the Prophet? Couldn't he just leave it for the community to decide? Just leave it for the community. Why God insists that I have the right? وَرَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ. Yakhtar, choosing for this task. Yakhtar is a process of selection. Selecting what? Selecting the successor to the Prophet. The caliph who's going to succeed the Prophet in his duties and his responsibilities. Why shouldn't God assign this task to the people to decide? Open it for election, for democracy. God says no. This issue is not open for people's opinion, because I would tell you why it's not open. Number one, when the Prophet was dying and leaving his nation, there were three threats surrounding closing in on the Muslim community. One was the threat of the Persian Empire, the second, the Roman Empire, and the most dangerous one, the third one, was the danger of the hypocrites, the fifth column within the Muslim Ummah. Those were people who lived among the people, among the Muslims, in the mosque, in the street, but they were very dangerous. They took upon themselves the policy of scorching earth policy to destroy Islam completely, annihilate this religion. And they tried to assassinate the Prophet. If you read the history, they tried to kill the Prophet. The Prophet was on his way coming back from northern Arabia, the northern part of the Arabian Peninsula, from the Battle of Tabuk, on the way back, they plotted to assassinate him, to kill him. But last minute, God saved his life. They ran away. They were part of the Muslim army. They would pray behind the Prophet, but they decided to kill him. So there were the danger of the hypocrites, the evil ones. And God says to the Prophet, those evil ones, some of them you recognize and some of them you don't even recognize. You don't know them. وَمِمَّنْ حَوْلَكُم مِّنَ الْأَعْرَابِ مُنَافِقُونَ وَمِنْ أَهْلِ الْمَدِينَةِ مَرَدُوا عَلَى النِّفَاقِ لَا تَعْلَمُهُمْ نَحْنُ نَعْلَمُهُمْ سَنُعَذِّبُهُمْ مَرَّتَيْنِ. Some of them you can recognize, but some of them I would not even allow you, Ya Muhammad, to recognize. I protect their identity for some reasons and for some wisdom. You don't even know them. They try to destroy your religion, your state, your ummah, your nation, your message. They don't like it. They did not accept Islam wholeheartedly. They don't believe in Islam. But they had no choice, because if you can't beat them, then join them. And this is exactly what they did. So, under these circumstances, God said, you have to appoint a successor. You can't leave the issue open for the ummah to decide. Some of those hypocrites are so dangerous. لَقَدِ ابْتَغَوُا الْفِتْنَةَ لَكَ مِنْ قَبْلِ وَقَلَّبُوا لَكَ الْأُمُورِ حَتَّى جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ وَظَهَرَ الْحَقِّ وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. لَقَدِ ابْتَغَوُا الْفِتْنَةَ. They always planned for what? For sedition, for conspiracy, for division, for disturbance, to weaken your state, to weaken your ummah, to create chaos in the middle of the community. لَقَدْ ابْتَغَوُا الْفِتْنَةِ. If you read the Holy Quran, read the following chapters. Read chapters Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Al-Ahzab, Munafiqun, At-Tawbah, Al-Ankabut, and many others. You will be amazed. How did Islam survive with this huge number of hypocrites and with their evil plots? How did Islam survive? Seldom a day would be found that the Prophet can have peace of mind. There is no mutiny, there is no disturbance, there is no defiance to him. Seldom. Every single day there is a problem in his mosque, in his community. So under such circumstances, the Prophet, Islam was in danger. And you can't leave your ummah, your nation, without appointing someone. You can't tell your community, well, I would leave it for you. You decide. You would not do that. You would not do that. You have to have someone. You have to have someone who can unify the people, who can lead the nation, who can continue this important task of leadership and protecting the ummah. So this is number one. The Prophet would not leave this issue to the community to decide. The issue of khilafah and imamah. He has to appoint someone. Number one. Number two, my friends, when we read the history of Islam, the seerah of the Prophet, the lifestyle of those who were with him, they were ordinary people. Many of them, despite accepting Islam with their tongue, but they had hard time to accept it with their hearts. And there is a difference between accepting faith with tongue and accepting it with heart. يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا قُلْ لَا تَمُنُّوا عَلَيَّ إِسْلَامَكُمْ بل الله يمن عليكم أن هداكم للإيمان قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا. You accepted Islam with mouth. You didn't accept it with heart. The journey of accepting it by heart, it's not easy. It's a very long journey. You need more time. You need more commitment. You need more work, more dedication to say we became believers. Now say I'm a Muslim, but not a mu'min. There is a big difference between Islam and Iman. The journey is very long. The distance between them is very long. So many of them, they would accept Islam, but still there is some residue in their hearts of tribalism, of nationalism, of sectarianism, because they still belong to many tribes. And they had this sense of nationality, sense of tribalism. Each one wants to fight for his tribe, not for his religion. And oftentimes you see the fights between them, the quarrel between them inside the mosque. While the Prophet is there, some of them, they fight among themselves. Because it's really very hard to cleanse the heart completely. It's very hard. It's not easy. Under such circumstances, when many of them were not still mature, they were not mature enough to assume the responsibility of leadership, the Prophet would not tell them then, you have to decide your fate by yourself. He would not do that. Unless they become really mature and more responsible, fully mature. And they didn't, unfortunately. Until the last days of the life of the Prophet, many of them were irresponsible. Read the history of Islam. Few days before the death of the Prophet, on Thursday, Raziyatul Khamis, we had this catastrophe of Thursday. What happened? The Prophet is about to die, and he says to his community, "Ituni bidawatin wa qirtas li'aktuba lakum kitaban lan tadillu ba'di abada." There was commotion, there was disturbance. Some of them started to scream, "No, don't give him the book, don't give him the pen. We don't want him." Someone says, "Hasbuna kitabullah." We have the Quran. We don't allow him to write. Imagine, this is after 23 years of his hard work, of his service, of his guidance. Still today, 3 days before his death, some people say we don't need Muhammad. We have the Quran. Quran is enough for us. This is exactly what they said. Is this a mature community? Is this a responsible reaction to the Prophet? Many of them, not all of them, many of them. Read the history. This is a fact that cannot be denied. This fact has been mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari 7 times, in 7 different chapters and locations. This fact, that they defied the Prophet. They challenged him. They disobeyed him. He says, "Give me a pen and paper and listen to me." They didn't listen to him. فَكَثُرَ اللَّغَطُ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. There was commotion. They didn't even listen to him. They didn't respect him. So the Prophet said, إِلَيْكُمْ عَنِّي قُومُوا عَنِّي. Leave me alone. I don't need such people. So this has happened. It's a reality. Can you trust such people? Can you trust them and tell them, "Listen, I'm going to die, and you decide the leadership among yourselves"? When the Prophet was still alive, they created disturbance. Imagine if the Prophet dies now, the leader dies. What will happen? Not only Raziyatul Khamis, another disobedience of them. Ba'thu Usama. Usama ibn Zayd, a young man. His father, Zayd ibn Haritha, was killed in the Battle of Mu'tah, southern Jordan, defending Islam against the Roman aggression. The Prophet said, "Usama has to go and you have to join him. No one stays in Medina." But they didn't. They refused. They didn't go. The Prophet says, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ تَخَلَّفَ عَنْ جَيْشِ أُسَامَةَ. They did not listen. They stayed there. They disobeyed the Prophet, my friends. They did. They did. These are facts, not fictions. These are very hard to breaking incidents in the history of Islam. The Prophet died while he was crying for some members of his community who insulted him, who disrespected him, who did not listen to him. وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. While the Quran is forewarning them, listen to your leader, listen to the Prophet. When you listen to him, you are listening to God. They didn't. Can you trust such community? I can't trust them. I'm sorry. I have to be realistic. The third point here. Why did the Prophet appoint and he did not leave the issue open for them to decide? Today in every society, in every civilized country, in every democracy, today you have a president followed by what? Vice president. You have a prime minister followed by deputy prime minister. You have a king followed by whom? Crown prince. Waliyul Ahd. In every society. In case the president dies, something happens to him, he becomes incapacitated, then there is someone replacing him immediately. Immediately. There is no power vacuum. There is no commotion. There is no disturbance. This happens in every society today, whether religious or non-religious, secular. Whether in the East or in the West. Actually, in some countries who do not accept that the Prophet appointed Imam Ali, in that country, not only they have Waliyul Ahd, they have Waliyul Ahd. Do you see that? When it comes to the Prophet, they said the Prophet did not have Waliyul Ahd. He did not appoint someone. But when it comes to their monarchy, the king has Waliyul Ahd, crown prince, and Waliyul Ahd, lining up to assume leadership. Do you see the contradiction here? They are contradicting themselves. In every society, today and yesterday, a leader has a deputy, has a successor. Why? To assure the safety of the ummah. The ummah would not deviate. The ummah know that after him, this person is going to assume the leadership. Now, if ordinary people understand this and they get it, the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam does not get it, al-iyadu billah. God forbids. Definitely the Prophet knows. He knows his duties. Probably I mentioned this story. Someone who used to say, the Prophet, an imam of the masjid, he was talking to me. He said, the Prophet lam yusili ahadim min ba'dih. He did not appoint anyone after him. He left the issue open for the ummah. I said to him, you are an imam of a small mosque. Has it happened one day that you don't go to the mosque and then you don't send someone to stand there to lead the prayers? Has it happened? He said, no, I can't leave the mosque without appointing a successor, a substitute. I said, if you lead a mosque of only 50 people here and you don't leave them without an imam, do you think the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah, he would leave his ummah, entire religion, and he's not just a prophet for mankind, he's وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. He would leave his ummah without successor? Can you accept that? Where is your brain? He said, you are right. I didn't think about this. We have to use our brains. So the Prophet did appoint. But unfortunately, some people, they did not like him. 70 days, it was a public declaration. 70 days after the death of the Prophet. 110,000 people, they stand in the middle of the desert with that scorching sun, burning sands underneath them. And the Prophet carries his arm and he says, Man kuntu mawlah, fahada aliyun mawlah. Allahumma wali man walah, wa'adi man adah, wansur man nasara, wakhdul man khadala. And this call and this prayers is still reverberating. Some people choose to accept, and some people out of what? Sometimes prejudice, sometimes they don't know. They don't hear these stories. These stories are taboo. You can't talk about them. Talk about something else. Do not discuss imama and khilafah. Why? Because they tell you, nowadays they say, don't speak about Imam Hussein. Don't speak about Ashura. Why? Because it creates division. Allah. creates division when I speak about Imam Hussein. And the Prophet himself says, حسين مني وأنا من حسين أحب الله من أحب حسينا. So is he creating division in his community? I'm following the tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm fighting corruption. When I celebrate Hussein, I'm fighting corruption, injustice, wrongdoing. I'm not creating division. I'm acknowledging that we have a problem in the ummah. We have some corrupt people in the ummah. We have to cleanse the ummah from those corrupt people. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.